Hi there guys, welcome to another Rez Dissects. So I came across this from TalkSport's the day after the Man United Spurs game. It was Simon Jordan and Martin O'Neill talking about the two managers involved. And it was just more of the same big club exceptionalism, using all sorts of points, none of which were actually backed up by evidence. All of it assertions used as evidence, which is bad debate. But it goes to show the level of contempt these pundits actually hold us in, because they simply don't even try to craft an argument. They just make assertions because they believe that we weren't able to actually form, or aren't able to actually form, an opinion of our own. They just trot stuff out. You would think that Martin O'Neill, who likes to sort of paint himself as someone who's quite intelligent, would be better, but he didn't. And Jordan in particular, who, to be fair to him, does occasionally make cogent and well thought out points, here just engages in trotting out cliches, which I found a little hypocritical, given how he was banging on about the need for intelligent answers to questions just 24 hours later, which I'll cover in my response to this. But surprise, surprise, it all boils down to their idea that Postecoglou isn't in the right class to be the Man United manager, allegedly. In advance, because the way they structure their answers is a bit gish-galloping. I've had to put my response into a couple of larger sections, whereas I usually like to do them in shorter chunks. Anyway, let's get into it. I'll state, in the interest of fairness, that I skipped over about 4 minutes at the beginning of their vid. It wasn't 100% relevant to what I'm covering here, but I have put the link in the description if any of you lovely people want to check out the whole thing. Yeah, as I say, it's sort of all thrown together, or the answers, so I have to sort of like watch a huge section before I can respond. Yeah, so this is sort of around where I thought I could actually put in a response. Yeah. So to each point, you both say, Simon and Martin, that the environment is different at Man United, that fan expectation is different. Every club will be a different environment. Or are you suggesting that the environment at Man United is something completely apart from others? Is there some energy barrier starting, I don't know, at Bolton or Salford or Oldham that imparts some transmogrifying effect on football managers when they cross it? Look, Man United are not the Man United of Ferguson's pomp. That decline is now well into its second decade. Ferguson retired in 2013. So at what point does a club's status change then? Or is it permanent? If that's the case, then surely the logical conclusion is that Spurs fans have every right to expect their club to win the double every year because we won it back in 1961. That's patently false. So where is the line drawn? As I said at the start, This is simply the exceptionalism that you lot constantly bestow, almost by rote, on the big spending clubs. Chelsea, Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Man United. They're oh so special. Never mind that these clubs, respectively, bought the vast majority of their success under the whim of a man widely considered to be an economic gangster, have owners that use their vast oil wealth to try to sportswash the human rights violations they engage in at home, are managed by mobile teeth regularly discombobulated by wind, are managed by a Lego minifigure impersonator without the intense emotionality, and are managed by a walking personality vacuum. You bestow all manner of accolades and qualities on these clubs when they are anything but paragons of anything. Yet Spurs, the sixth most successful club in English footballing history, I might add, are never treated in the same fashion. You want to relegate us to a lower tier, even though we have one of the biggest global fan bases in the world. Not as big as United, I'll readily acknowledge, but still definitely one of the big boys. Why is that? Why is that you, Simon, in particular, in this instance? Why is it that you seem to want to push Spurs into the little club category? Whose interests does that serve? Could it be your friend Daniel's? Could it be that you've not analysed the expectations of Spurs fans, but are rather trying to manage the expectations of Spurs fans, so that we see ourselves as less deserving of the highest honours? Now, before anyone gets too het up, this is not an anti-Levy screed. That isn't the point I'm making. What I am pointing out is that you deflect criticism of certain figures who come in for fan ire. That stifles the voice of fans, all the while trying to project an image of being a voice for them. That's not honest brokerage. You lot go on to say that there were massive upsides for Postecoglou in taking the role, and you do it by trying to minimise the huge challenges he faced and still faces. But let's talk about upsides. There were massive upsides for Postecoglou. As opposed to any other vacant managerial role, most new managers come into a role where the previous manager failed or moved on. It's still all upside for a new manager. If they succeed, they reap the accolades. And if they fail, then they were presented with too difficult to challenge. But again, you're ignoring the major truth, which is they get paid, Simon. A truth willfully ignored. The same one I pulled the no longer floppy-haired one up for previously. That it's a job. Do you know what the real upside is for Ange Postecoglou? The money he's being paid. Now, if you're talking about the difference in the challenge presented, let's look at it objectively. Man United are a club with enormous resources, which they readily spend. Spurs are careful of their own resources, considerable though they are, which you well know. Man United have a squad that has been put together through that enormous spending power, boasting a wealth of talent garnered from all over the footballing world. Spurs have a squad, or had a squad, that could best be described as ramshackle, with players on the books who had been there for nearly a decade, who should have been replaced years previously. A squad constructed through the whims and wants of 4 different permanent managers with vastly differing styles in the previous 4 years. A squad that included one of the biggest flops in Premier League history, Tanguy, I Fancy a Big Mac and Ndombele. A squad with players who had virtually taken out mortgages on their treatment tables. A squad containing players bought in for the sell-on value who had more encounters with the pitch at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium through pictures than actual first-hand experience. And presiding over it all, your friend Daniel, a chairman who has become the definition of micromanagement, a chairman who was far too involved in both the transfer and the coaching aspects of the club. Again, not going into Daniel Levy on this, but tell me, if offered the choice, which job do you think carries more challenge? Turning a chaotic, broken, almost morbidly mismanaged club like Spurs around, or having access to, in football terms, one of the biggest spending pots on the planet? But let's get down to the real brass tacks of this. I'll posit the following hypothesis. Let's say the Man United job was all of a sudden vacant. Who do you hire? Erik ten Hag or Ange Postecoglou? Now, the cultural question. Yes, the culture at Man United was festering. That's clear and obvious if the brain donors at the PGMOL will pardon the expression. But do you think the culture at Spurs was somehow overflowing with milk and honey in the summer? That Postecoglou was greeted with the ringing of the laughter of children when he first set foot in Hotspur Way? You just said, Simon, that Kane had become a drain as opposed to a radiator, leading to the other players in the squad relying on him more than on their own abilities. Isn't that a cultural problem, Simon? Isn't Spurs players knowing that they could go over the head of their manager to the chairman, as we witnessed firsthand in the All or Nothing documentary, a cultural problem? Isn't a chairman being too close to the players, eating lunch with them every day, and even going out on the training pitches while they train, and fostering an atmosphere of favouritism, a cultural problem? Isn't a leadership group that contained players who consistently let the rest of the team down, something that thankfully Postecoglou has dealt with, a cultural problem? Or is it only a cultural problem when it happens to a big spending club? Maybe I'm doing you dirty, Simon. Maybe your only source of information was your mate, Daniel. He's hardly going to tell you all that stuff, right? Again, I'm not making this about Daniel Levy. That isn't the point I'm making. I'm merely pointing out that all clubs have cultural issues from time to time, and that Spurs had a whole catalogue of them when Postecoglou first arrived, possibly made harder given the way Spurs operate financially. For instance, Spurs have been unable to ship out Ndombele permanently. Man United got rid of Paul Pogba, Mason Greenwood, and now Jadon Sancho quite easily, because they are willing to and able to shoulder the financial cost. So if anything, it could be argued that Erik ten Hag has an easier job of adjusting the culture at Man United than Postecoglou does at Spurs. But the culture problems at the two clubs is in reality actually the same problem. The question of who exerts the greatest influence. Before Postecoglou arrived, in Spurs' case, you, Simon, argue that it was Kane. I argue that it was inappropriate interference, favouritism, and players being prioritised over managers. Either way, it wasn't the manager. And at Man United, likewise, the manager wasn't the biggest influence on the club's culture. What Ange has done, however, but what Ten Hag seems unable to do at Man United, is make himself voice number one. And that's all that's needed at Man United. That's what Ferguson brought, and that's why he succeeded. Erik ten Hag doesn't have the personality, the will, or the sheer bollocks of Postecoglou. And we knew that before, because I would remind you that Ten Hag was interviewed for, but failed to land the Tottenham job. Funny that. The expectations of the fans don't factor into this. Fan involvement in day-to-day club matters is virtually nil and only makes up a small factor in deciding the key objectives for a club for a given season and in the longer term. You know this, Simon. You've been there. You've spoken about it, I'm sure, but in peddling the Man United and big spending club generally exceptionalism narrative, it's suddenly the greatest determinant factor in all footballing decisions in the known universe always. Do me a favour. Man United have not stopped prioritising players over their managers, something they've been doing since Ferguson vacated the hot seat. Look at Sancho, Pogba, Greenwood. The club want to protect the value of their assets, which is understandable. It's one of the realities of modern football. But Postecoglou has shown that he has the ruthlessness and the smarts needed to make himself the biggest voice at Spurs. Take Eric Dyer. Dyer wasn't in his plans. He refused to leave. Postecoglou benched him, put him on the bench and refused to play him, even when he had no centre-backs to call on. What happened? Dyer realised that there was no place for him at Spurs and he left. That is what Postecoglou did. His authority was maintained. It was reinforced. Even if the club itself wasn't in a position or didn't want to force an asset to leave, actively force the asset out. So, Postecoglou engineered a situation in which he benefited, the club benefited, and even the player himself could be said to have benefited. Does Ten Hag have the character, the force of personality, the cojones to do that? So tell me again that Postecoglou would struggle at Man United. Actually, do tell me. We Spurs fans are quite happy to be patronised by you so-called experts. We're okay with you rating the Man United job as too big for Big Ange. It just means we'll hold on to him, thanks very much. But I'll still post my Occam's razor question for you, Simon, and you, Martin. Which manager has demonstrated a better ability to manage the realities of modern football? Ange Postecoglou or Erik ten Hag? Yes, I know that wasn't an actual Occam's razor scenario, but what the hell, it's my video, right? And then we come to the increased scrutiny argument. My God, this one. The suggestion that every single peculiarity, as to use your words, is overanalyzed at Man United. As opposed to all the other clubs around the country and around the world. Have you watched YouTube recently? There are literally tens, possibly even hundreds of thousands of football channels out there. For crying out loud, Plymouth Argyle's YouTube channel has 27,000 subscribers. That's not me ranking on Plymouth Argyle. I'm saying that even a club with a smaller fan base has just as staunch and passionate a following as Man United. Argyle fans will just as closely scrutinise and analyse what happens at their club as Man United fans will at theirs. And you know what? How bloody patronising. What an insult to clubs like Plymouth and all the other teams without Man United's profile, Simon. You're essentially saying that their clubs matter less because they might not have as many supporters. But then, even with a lower profile, Spurs' profile isn't small. Expressions, a single Spurs content creator, has nearly 340,000 subscribers. TalkSport has 1.4 million. He, while operating alone or virtually alone, without all your production resources, your roster of talking heads, your national radio station, has still managed to rack up fully a quarter of the number of subscriptions you have. And he only covers one team while you cover all sport. Football channels literally rack up billions of views. Just because Man United might be the bigger, or even let's say they're the biggest, that doesn't make the running of Man United in any way different to other clubs. Again, this is the exceptionalism your lot constantly ram down our throats with absolutely no empirical evidence to back it up. This nonsense that managing Man United is different to managing Tottenham. In what way, Simon? Can you actually enumerate what those differences are and provide empirical evidence for them? You're one that often goes on about empirical evidence. Why not present some? Wouldn't that be an intelligent answer? You were banging on about intelligent answers the other day. Remember when you were busy deflecting the fully justified fan outrage at the Premier League's lethargy in going after Man City, while gleefully bringing the smackdown against Everton and Forest? Shouldn't you apply the same standards to your own answers? Let's have some empirical evidence. And you, Martin, a good time to come into Tottenham. Are you high? In the previous 4 years, we had 4 different permanent managers and 3 interims, one of them twice. We had a managing director of football who had been banned from football by FIFA. FIFA, for crying out loud. When FIFA accuse one of your employees of being corrupt, you've got a major reputational problem, regardless of whether he's guilty or innocent of a crime. And to top it all, Spurs had a chairman who was being roundly condemned by vast swathes of the fan base, with fans chanting at him to sling his hook at home games. So then what are the expectations the club would have of Postecoglou? Those are direct, not some nebulous, ill-defined, unsupported by evidence assertion you lot have been making. Or do they not exist? Do you think that Daniel Levy welcomed Postecoglou to the club with a breezy, "Hi there, Ange. Do call me Dan. Here are the toilets. The training pitches are to your left. My door's always open. Pop your head in if you have any questions and Linda will show you your desk." Are you kidding me? The expectations of Postecoglou from the higher-ups at Lily White House will be monumental. If nothing else, he's essentially been put in charge of rehabilitating Daniel Levy's reputation with a large section of the fan base. Do you think that's a small feat? Get your head out of your rectum, Martin. And what the hell are you banging on about relegation? That was never part of the equation. I can't think of a single Spurs fan who thought relegation was a serious possibility with Kane's departure. But if it had been, in what way would that reduce the pressure on Postecoglou, Martin? Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. After the intense pressure of Glasgow, I'm glad to take a bit of a breather here at Spurs, helping them avoid relegation. Christ almighty, you lot get lost faster than American tourists looking for Leicester Square. Apologies for the terrible Ange impressions, by the way, and to any American tourists. Anyway, the next bit.
Everybody always says, I see, it's different. It's different. Different scrutiny, different this, different history. Of course, I get it. But we knew what Tottenham would do before a ball was kicked in anger yesterday, and they did it. We didn't regard United. And we still don't really know why they're so easy to play through. We still don't really know what Ten Hag's going to trot out. We know what Ange is going to say. But we don't know what Manchester United are about 19 months on.
Yeah, well, I'm getting back to recruitment. I think some of the players that Manchester United have at their disposal are not good enough to play for Manchester United at the at the level in which they want to be competing, and which is at the very, very top echelon of the game.
Right, so yeah. There's more after at the end. Again, the link's in the description. But look at that. Jim White talking sense. I mean, it comes to a pretty pass when Jim White is the voice of reason in one's debate. Seriously, I'd get the TalkSport offices checked for gas leaks at this stage. So recruitment has been the problem, Martin. Because Spurs have been different, yes? Let's look at that, should we? At the beginning of this season, Spurs had on their books the following brilliant luminaries of football. Tongi Is There a KFC Near the Training Ground and Ndombele, Giovanni Sick Note Lo Celso, Hugo Lloris, Sergio Reguilon, who was loaned to Man United, and they sent him back. Ryan Sessegnon, a player who, having returned to first-team football after 6 months out, promptly got injured again. Brian Hill, Jed Spence, Joe Rodon, Davinson Sanchez, and, let's not forget, Eric Bleeding Dyer. You want to talk about poor recruitment, Martin? I would hesitate to deploy that roster of staff at a McDonald's, let alone line up for Spurs. Put aside this idea of Man United or any so-called big club exceptionalism. I've shown the environment argument is false. I've shown the cultural argument is false. I've shown the recruitment argument is false. So in what way are the money clubs different, gentlemen? Can we have some actual reasons, please, backed up by actual evidence? You don't have them. These are all false narratives that you lot disseminate, and we, the poor saps who fund your livelihoods, seem to lap up without question. It's utter rubbish. It's dreck, and it's designed to perpetuate the status quo. You lot can do better, but I know you won't. That's it for this Rez Dissects. If you lovely watching several come across any hot takes you'd like me to pick apart, do let me know. And if you enjoyed this ripping apart of some truly idiotic statements, you know, a gentle click of the thumbs up button and maybe even the subscribe one is a great way of giving me a little pat on the head as I go on my merry way. But hey, maybe I'm the one making idiotic statements. If you think that's the case, do drop a comment down below to let me know. And lastly, keep an eye out for more Tottenham on Tour content coming your way. Tomorrow at 9 a.m, we have Cockle-a-Doodle-Doo, your daily morning Spurs fix, so do tune in for that. Take care and see you again soon.